Remember when we took a look at the final application that we'd have this browse users section where we could find users to follow? For this, we need to make a request to get a user feed. We need to create the functionality for getting a user feed for a specific user. So if we look at our routes for API, users, feed, and user ID, we'll execute check auth and then run this get user feed function. Okay, so get user feed, we'll go to that. And from this, since we're using the user ID param, we'll have access to request.profile. So within our function, we'll make this async. We'll grab from, I should say we should destructure from request.profile following and underscore ID. And not only in our feed do we want to exclude the users that we're following, because of course we can't refollow a user that we're following. We only want to include in our feed the users that we're not following. We also want to include anything coming from ourselves. We don't want the ability to follow ourselves. So we'll need to take this following array of user IDs and push our own ID onto it. And this is before we run user.find. We want to find an array of users by their ID. We want to find all of the IDs that are not in the following array. So how do we do that? We use the $NIN not in operator. And as we said, we want all of the IDs not in our following array. And from the user data that returns, we just want their ID, name, and avatar. So we'll set the return value of this to users and say res.json users. So again, taking a look at our routes, it's /API/users/feed/user ID. So I head to Postman, and we can just paste that into our URL. Now we'll take the ID of the user we're signed in with, because we want their feed, and this is a GET request, so we can just hit send, and we can see the one user here that we're not following, and therefore shows up in our response, which is John. However, we can expect that if we follow John, and if we rerun the put request that we made to the follow endpoint by hitting send, and then by going back to our user's feed, making a GET request for that again, we should see that the feed is empty since we're now following our only other user.